Good morning, everybody. We start this morning with the public hearing, and I will start with the public hearing address. I'm Mark Pendergraft, and I'll be chairing the public hearing this morning. This is a public hearing for proposed Regional District of Okanagan-Smilkameen bylaws number 2800.02 2022. The proposed bylaw and related information, including written comments received to date, is available for review from the Regional District's webpage. At this public hearing, all persons wishing to speak will be given an opportunity to do so and are asked to commence their remarks by stating their name and address. Written comments may be submitted before closure of this hearing. Anyone wishing to speak at this public hearing is asked to do one of the following. If you are participating by a computer, please click the raise hand button, which can be found in the participants panel on the right-hand side of your computer screen. This will indicate that you wish to speak. If you are participating by a phone, please press star 3 on your phone's keypad. This will also indicate that you wish to speak. Having indicated that you wish to speak, you will then be placed in a queue until you are invited to speak. All speakers will be restricted to a time limit of 5 minutes until everyone who wishes to speak has had an opportunity to do so. Anyone wishing to speak a second time may do so by following the same protocol of selecting the raise hand button on your computer or by pressing star 3 on your phone's keypad. To submit written comments, please email them to planning@rdos.bc.ca prior to the close of this public hearing. I will now ask Colin Martin, Planning Services Clerk, to outline the specifics of the proposed bylaw. Please go ahead, Colin.
Thanks, Dr. Pendergraft. So currently the bylaw doesn't clearly define mobile vendors such as food trucks, and as of now they're prohibited in all zones except parks and recreation. This amendment is to the Okanagan Valley zoning bylaw, which includes electoral areas A, C, D, E, F, and I. It is being proposed that that a new definition be added to the zoning bylaw for mobile vendors. More specifically, that mobile vendor means a vehicle intended to move from location to location for the purposes of offering for sale food and retail products. Additionally, it will remove any reference to mobile vendors in the definition of eating and drinking as well, or establishments as well. So mobile vendors will be limited to agriculture, town and village, commercial tourist, industrial, and parks and recreation zones, as well as additional approval will also be required from the Agricultural Land Reserve for any parcels that might be on, from the Agricultural Land Commission for any parcels on the Agricultural Land Reserve. Finally, staff would like to point out that there is a minor error in the report's title. However, despite that error, electoral area E will also be part of this amendment as well. Thanks.
Thank you, Colin. I declare the public hearing open and ask if there is anyone who wishes to speak to the proposed bylaws. Just double checking to see if I'm seeing any hands. I'll ask for a second time. Is there anyone who wishes to speak to the proposed bylaws? Am I missing anybody, Danny, that you're seeing on the computer? Okay, I don't believe we have extra. Looks like nobody. For a third and final time, is there anyone who wishes to speak to the proposed bylaws? Seeing again no hands, I will hereby declare this public hearing closed at 9:05 a.m. Thank you for everybody's attention on that. We will move on to Corporate Services Committee. We have a proposed agenda before us. Looking for a motion to approve the agenda. Moved, seconded, thank you. All those in favor? Thank you very much. Any opposed? Motion carries. First item on the agenda is the Q2 Corporate Business Plan Report. I'll go to the CAO.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Now I'm going to try and share this document with you, but if that doesn't work, you each have this in your agenda package. So let me try that. No, okay. Anybody see that? Okay. Maybe what I'll do is just go through it quickly with you. So we're looking pretty good as far as at the end of June. Really what we wanted to do was to try and complete as many of the projects that this board had set up at the start of their term back in 2018. And I think we're doing all right. So anything that had indication of a Q1 or Q2, that's supposed to be where we're at this stage in our evolution. And as we look at our 4 key success drivers, so key success driver number 1, which is where we look internally, that's about being a high-performing organization. It's where we talk about our financial oversight and being an effective local government. Financially, we had a successful audit. It was unqualified, which is always good. We've adopted our 2022 to 2026 financial plan, and we're working our way through towards the end of the 2022 fiscal year, and everything's going fine. Mr. Safino went through the variance report at the last meeting, and we had a couple of our 160 budgets that were not, I would say not in trouble, but that we're keeping an eye on. So that's a pretty good record. So we're happy there. As far as effective local government, this is where we, because we're growing and because of the COVID requirements, we were looking at additional office space for staff. We moved over to the 176 Main. That's where our new data center is, that is funded through COVID funding. As a result of our 2020 cyber attack, where it was pointed out that we needed to improve our infrastructure. So that is now up and operating, and our IS manager is working closely with all of our member municipalities to see if we can help them out, or if they wanted to transfer in to some of the capabilities that that offers. So we're in process on that. Our 2022 citizen survey, which we would normally do this year, we do this every 2 years, we're going to do in 2023. So that should probably be read. But overall, on this objective 1.1.2, we're looking pretty good as far as effectiveness. We are going to bring in a consultant to talk about a broad-based customer service program, and we're inviting our other partners in on that as well. So that's going on schedule. When we get into a healthy and safe organization, always one of our performance measurements is how we stack up against other local governments in our classification from workers' compensation. We just, those reports come out in July. So not a Q2 activity, but we did just get that report out, and we did fare better than the other local governments in our classification level. And the important part about that is that you get rebates from workers' compensation when you're below the rest of your group. So we're successful on that for another year. We still are very cautious about the pandemic, and while we're not on a safety plan right now, our communicable disease program is still ongoing, and we still offer employee support on that. I know the numbers are still up there, and this is now just really, I think, a regular occurrence that we're going to have to take into account, that all organizations are. Local government is becoming more, I think every place now, more and more stressful. Seems that our employees are taking advantage more of the weekly indemnity programs and long-term disability because of stress or psychological problems. So we're continuing to try and bring more training into the organization as far as psychological safety. So we're working hard on that. That's through our Human Resources Department. And we are successful in the fact that we don't have anybody out on long-term disability because of stress right now, which is better than what it was a year ago at this time. So we're making progress on that, but it certainly caught our attention, and we're paying attention to it. We are starting on that certificate of recognition program, which is a safety, safety program. And the idea this year is to just get ready for it. So there's a lot of preparation and work that goes into just getting ready for the external auditor that will come in and conduct their audit on our organization, where we are working with our volunteer fire departments to see if they want to participate, and we're getting good response from them on that. So we hope to include them when that external auditor comes in. And I mean, the whole purpose of this is to improve how we address and make sure that we're meeting the WorkSafe BC legislation. So that is ongoing. We think we're on track on that. The third one is about organizational culture, which is important for any organization. And for us, that's our staff perception survey that we do on an annual basis. I come in and report to the board each year. Comparison, we have about a 12-year trend line now that shows how the organization has evolved, and it gives us a really good idea of what the issues are and what we need to work on. And we always involve our employees in developing the solutions to the issues that they bring to our attention. So that is ongoing. We didn't create an employee committee this year because we're working on customer service and leadership, and we're doing that through consultants. But we are involving them in all of those programs. There's lots of interaction by all of our employees on customer service and leadership. So that's in progress. We will do our staff perception survey again in November of 2022 so that we can get the statistical results to compare to previous years on our organizational culture. And we will do our 360 evaluations on all leaders in the organization. So those that have employees reporting to them, those employees will have a chance to comment on their supervisor or leader's performance as well as the other way around. So that's going well. The fourth one on that is we really wanted to focus on our information technology and to not only address the recommendations that came out of our cyber attack in 2020 and the forensic security audit, where some weaknesses were pointed out, but just to take advantage of the capabilities that are available out there now from a technological point of view. So we're working away on that, and certainly the new data center at 176 Main is going to help us out with that, and the new equipment that came along with the lease on that facility. We are moving into the cloud, so all of the servers and the databases that we have, we are progressing on to Microsoft 365. And that's a gradual process for us, but we're making headway, and that is on schedule as well. And I mentioned the regional data center. So when we get into key success driver number 2, this is our outwardly focused key success driver. And this is where we talk about making sure that our citizens understand what services we provide. I know it's confusing as to what the senior levels provide, what local governments provide. And really, when somebody just wants a service, they don't care who provides it. They just want a result. So we have to get out there and make sure that people understand who can best satisfy their needs. So we're working hard on that. And we all are working on the 2022 corporate communications program. And that comes through our legislative services department, and they'll be in to report to the board prior to the end of this term. As far as, I mean, we're a service organization, just like any local government. And when we identify a service that we want to initiate or improve on, we usually include that into our corporate business plan so that we can report back to the board. That's part of your oversight responsibility. There were a couple that were identified either last year that when we went out to our citizens or the board had a chance to further consider it, they determined not to proceed with that service, or when we do our capacity review during strategic planning, we find out that we don't have the resources to complete it in the time period that we were interested in. So with the Lower Nippet Improvement District, Twin Lakes, when they were interested in turning their improvement district over to the regional district from a flood management or a land management point of view, we determined that we wouldn't proceed on that. So that one was abandoned. And then this next one, 2.1.2.2, was just a duplication. That was included in a different objective in the corporate business plan. So we just pointed that out and took it out. You just did get the report on the electoral area D service and boundary configuration study. So that one is complete. The recommendation out of that was to now move on to the next stage. So we'll be submitting our application to Municipal Affairs for the incorporation study and the grant that would come along with that. And I'm sure we'll hear, not before the election, but we'll hear back from Municipal Affairs on that next step. The second goal under this key success driver was again about continuous improvement of key services. And we had identified that we wanted to update our invasive weed and pest bylaw. So that change to the regulatory bylaw is underway. And we just need the details on that from engineering, which is responsible for invasive weeds in our organization. So that will come soon. That is a third quarter activity, and we're making good progress on that. The new development software that we've been working on for about 3 years now, mostly with planning and building inspection. We had some initial difficulties with that, but we're getting to the point where we can go live on the building inspection section of that. So we expect that to happen in Q3. And then we'll move on to planning, and then there's also a component for public works as far as tying the development engineering into development approval. So we're doing all right there. We're working on, we always have this question about what's the regulation around right to enter. We send our bylaw enforcement officers out to do inspections on property, and while we have the legislation to do it, it's not perhaps always the most polite way to wander onto somebody's property, taking pictures and recording what's going on at the time. So we want to make sure that we're looking at that from a public relations point of view as well. So that's why that service is under review. When we get into transit, the transit future plan is under review right now, but the Penticton Kelowna service has been completed, the upgrade in that. The West Bench service is now implemented, and we are working with the town of Princeton to see if we can make the Princeton service more of a regional program. So we're working on that. Hope to have that done by the end of the year. BC Transit's involved in that discussion as well. Key success driver number 3 is those 3 pillars of community sustainability. So environmental, social, and economic. And under socially sustainable region, we had a number of activities. One was on our regional emergency management program, and the board is determined to do a review. So that terms of reference for that project is on your board agenda later on today. And then once we get the terms of reference approved, we can go out and hire the consultant that will undertake that study. So that is underway. And then we know under the Sendai framework, we're not quite there as far as all of the 4 components. We do a good job on preparedness. We're working on on response. We aren't quite there as far as the recovery side of it and the mitigation program. So I'm sure there will be further discussions on that, probably coming out of the emergency management study that we're going to be doing later this year. Still stay tuned as far as emergency management. And I will give the board an update under the meeting later on this afternoon on the Caramedas Creek fire. The parks program, we had a few things that we wanted to do. You did get an indication of where we were going with the Regional Parks Trails Recreation Master Plan. So that's underway. And they'll be back with that after the next phase to report out to the board. I know the school district 67 has just come out with their capital plan. So we will be in discussions with them about the West Bench School. And if they are going to dispose of property on that parcel, then of course we're interested. And we'll just keep in touch with them as to when they're ready to talk to us about that. And then same with the KVR trail through West Bench. We understand now that the addition to reserve program is complete and that Penticton Indian Band has acquired that section of the CP trail. So again, once they get to the point where they're ready to start discussing future programs on the KVR as to what they might want to use it for, we'll be in discussion with them to see if we could support public use of that important transportation network. The second pillar of community sustainability is economic sustainability. And this is where we wanted to introduce our asset management plan to get our software so that we could make it electronic. And we are on schedule, but a little bit slow. Just getting organized on that. We are out for proposals right now on the software part of that, and then there will be some data entry and getting organized. And we are still working on our purchasing sales policy to make that electronic. The policy itself will be up, I think, to committee at the next meeting, and Mr. Sfino is complete on that. We just have to get it onto your docket. Long-range planning is an important activity for the regional district, and we have a lot of planning issues that we need to resolve. First of all, just sort of starting at the top of the hierarchy, the regional growth strategy is under review, and that is really where we identify where growth will occur throughout the regional district. The sub-regional growth strategy, it is only applicable in the Okanagan, not the Similkameen. But we will be back with that, talking about where growth will occur and the regulations around that. And then the Area G OCP is in progress right now, and that's before you. Will be on your docket, your board agenda again this afternoon. And then Area E, we hope to have that done around the end of the year, but it will probably get adopted in 2023. There were a couple of initiatives that were identified in strategic planning, that session you had last November with Gord McIntosh, that we put onto the corporate action plan that we just didn't have the resources to do in 2022. So we're not losing those. They're still on the plan, but we'll carry those forward. But they were removed when we brought this to your attention back in February, that we were allowed to take that off just due to capacity. So that one about alternative housing solutions and the short-term rentals, we've got that. We'll carry forward into our 2023 plan. When we get into environmental sustainability, this is at goal 3.3. We're just still struggling with the organics facility, the treatment and processing facility that we want to put at 1313 Grayback Mountain Road. So yes, we're on to that. I'm probably running over my time. How much time do we have here? 30. Yeah, I know that the administrative overhead policy is important to you, so I don't want to take any time from Mr. Safino when he gets ready to present that. So we're moving ahead well. We still are waiting for the decision from the Agricultural Land Commission on our appeal to their previous finding on whether we could make that property a non-farm use for our organic facility, but we haven't heard yet. So that then affects a lot of the issues that we have under solid waste in our 2022 plan. So we're waiting on that. The south facility at Oliver is coming along well. It's under construction now. We hope to have it finished by the end of the year, and then we can start doing the collection pilot in the south. And again, because we're so tight for space at Campbell Mountain Landfill, we know that the city of Penticton is anxious to upgrade their compost facility. That's going to be dependent on 1313 Grayback Mountain Road. But we are working with them to make sure that they're still on board. The infrastructure upgrades, we expect to hear back on the BioCover substituted requirement application to environment very shortly. We've had an indication that we will be getting an operating certificate for that with a whole bunch of conditions. So we're just waiting to see the final document on that, but we expect that within the next couple of weeks. So we're being optimistic. This has been like a 10-year application process, but we think we are close to the end. And then that will alleviate us from having to purchase and install an active gas capture system to meet the regulation that we're in contravention of right now and have been since 2016. So that's ongoing. The leachate program is going well. The board's aware that some of that leachate has moved off of the Campbell Mountain site and that we were on the contaminated sites register for that. So we're installing a leachate collection program and a lagoon where that leachate will go. And we've got all of the infrastructure developed now. It's just there may be some cleanup on that as to how we dispose of the effluent out of that. And we right now it's all going by evaporation, but we're going to prepare if that doesn't completely happen in future years. So we're working away on that. We really need to know what's going to happen with 1313 Grayback Mountain Road before we can complete our solid waste master plan. And the new access, egress, and scales for Campbell Mountain is dependent on that and a number of other projects as well.
I see a hand from
Please.
Director Gettins. Do you have a question?
I do, Chair. Thanks. I think actually I've got two questions. I think you touched on it first. The under the key success driver number 3 to develop a healthy and socially sustainable region is 3.1.1.1 and the same numbers but 0.5. Is that the small housing and short-term rentals? It's just it's blank in on my sheet here, and I just want to make sure that's I think that's the ones you just talked about.
Oh, sorry, give me the numbers again.
3.1.1.1.
Okay, the one that was taken out on February 17th.
Yeah, what is that blank? Is that the small housing?
Oh, you have a blank?
I've got quite a few blanks in my report, actually.
Oh,
Yeah, so it
too
looks like
bad I
the
couldn't
one
share
that
that document.
yeah, one that says COM 17 Feb, those are blank. And then all the abandons are blanked as well.
Oh, I'll send you out a new copy, and hopefully all of your rows and columns will be filled in.
Okay, thanks. And just one quick follow-up question too. I think we removed the Sage Mesa water transfer. We removed it off of this because it was in the hands of the Sage Mesa water system owners. Is that at all changed, the status of that? Is it back on our plan if we're working on it? Because I know staff's spending a lot of time on it. So I just wanted to confirm with you where that lands on this corporate plan. Thanks.
No, Sage Mesa water system is a pending action for us. So as soon as we hear back from the owners, we'll bring that to the board's attention.
Okay, thanks.
And where was I? Wastewater, I think we're good there. But again, committee is aware that we weren't successful on that Building Canada 2 grant as far as Skaha Estates or Cleeden went, or the Naramata wastewater treatment system. So that was unsuccessful, put it that way. The water system status, so you can see that we have a lot of work underway there in the various of the 10 water systems that we own or manage. We're doing that. The Meadow Valley Aquifer is on your ticket for later today. You'll get a presentation from the consultant on how that's going out in the Falder area. So we'll do that. So other than that, and then in key success driver number 4, Mr. Chair, that's that provide governance and oversight. So that's really the board governance key success driver that we have. You can see that we're plodding along throughout 2022 on the strategic plan. And then we are already starting administratively on 2023 with the workshops. So that is in progress and we're on schedule on that. Board effectiveness, we had that we were going to do some local board council training programs. We have that teed up with some of our member municipalities for after the election. So we'll make that part of the orientation program for the 2022-26 elected officials. And we're working still to try and reopen communications with our 4 Indigenous communities. Really not much progress on that one right now, but we're working on it. It's just everybody's just busy. And then the election on October 15th of 2022. Nomination day on September 15th. So the packages for interested candidates are out for the regional district to be picked up. And Ms. Malden has that under control. So we're working away on that. And that's it on the business plan, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you, CAO. Is there any questions or comments in regards to that? I'm not seeing any hands. That brings us to administrative overhead policy, item C on our agenda. I'll go to the CAO.
Yeah, and I'm going to turn this over to Mr. Safino. So this is really, this stemmed out of a concern from Oliver about the administrative charges applied to the capital programs that are benefiting from grants. And so Mr. Safino has looked through the policy again and come up with some different options for you, and he's going to take you through those right now.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Safino, he's here in the room with us, so please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. the policy that the different options that I've given you are all based on philosophies, and the technical philosophies, the 2 weeks after I started on what the board.
Excuse me, Chair. We can't hear very well.
Okay, can we adjust the
I
vote?
can speak up. Can you hear this?
We'll move some speakers around here to get that maybe functioning just a little better.
Thank you. I hope that you can hear me now.
Is that better?
It's a bit better, but it's not nearly as well as your voice coming through.
Okay, he'll try it now.
I'll speak up. What I was stating is that the different options, and there's 4 options plus the current policy, are all based on different philosophies. And the philosophy would probably be different from the municipalities and electoral areas. But what I'm stating is, don't look at the end results. Look at the philosophy and determine which philosophy beats the organization and what is fair. So with that, the philosophies that I used, and it's part of the policies that we have for the administration, and that's fairness. Each service pays its fair share of the costs. Reasonableness, and that's allocate charges should not exceed the gross operational costs. And so what that means is if the operational cost is $10,000, there shouldn't be an $11,000 admin fee. Transparency and simplicity. Essentially, all of the options are transparent and simple because it has to be consistent. The ease of administration, and finally, objectivity. So what that means is that there should be no judgment on each service where someone says, well, my service doesn't require much support, so you should give me a special deal. So if we're consistent, we're transparent, we're fair, and no one can come back and say that the dollars have been manipulated. So the philosophy for the current option and option 4 are very similar. So what that does is that the options for 4 is that all services, including capital, create an unequal burden on the organization. So that means that there's different amount of staff time depending on the service. So we're using a tier basis, and that's what the board originally accepted. The tier basis acknowledges that there are some services that take more time than others. And you've got some services that are $700 for the budget. So that is a tier basis. The tier for that one would be the lowest tier. So it'll be a tier 4, or it could be a tier 5, depending on the service level. So the current policy, as directed by the board, is that 20% of the administration costs are transferred over to the capital. So that doesn't mean it's 20% of the capital costs, it's 20% of the whatever the administration cost is for that year, and then redistributed back amongst the capital projects. The option 4 is exactly the same philosophy, except the formula is 12%. And I went back and I tried to get some sort of backup in that I can defend the 12%. And I went through the 2023 capital budget and looked at the dollars, and compared to the operational, it's close to being 12%. I just rounded it to an even number rather than using 11 point whatever ever. So that's the current and option 4. Option 1, the philosophy for this option is that all services, including the capital, create an unequal burden on the organization, and the administration charge should be charged on the additional burden. Again, it's a tier basis. This option does not include any transfers to capital. So what it's saying is there is recognizing that we're not going to classify this as a burden. We're not going to capitalize any of the costs. So in that case there, the operational costs will be hit more because that same cost is still the same. The operational cost on the services does not change no matter what option you choose. So that's the option that's as close as it was before I started, but it wasn't equal on that one. Before I started, it was similar to option 1, but there was no administration on wages. So that created a burden on the accounts that had more non-wage operational expenses. Option 2 The philosophy for option 2 is that all services create an equal burden on the organization, and that also includes debt servicing. Now, I included that because in November of 2021 or 2020, I was asked that question is, first of all, why don't we charge administration on debt servicing? Is it fair? So I wanted to include that to show what kind of results that would show. And on the backup where it shows the results on the philosophy for option 2, it does increase the administration costs materially on the municipalities, because municipalities have more infrastructure, they need more funds to update their roads, for instance, their sewer, water, etc. So they're going to borrow more. But and the average for that was 4.45% right across the board. No difference, regardless of what your service costs are. Philosophy for option 3 is that all services create an equal burden, again, on the organization. However, this option shows the results without debt servicing, and that's a 5.54% across the board. Again, is the philosophy correct in that there is an equal burden on that? I do show, and I should show, I want to show this on, so what this slide here shows that regardless of which option the board chooses, you'll see that the administration costs, which is the support costs, are the same right across. It doesn't matter. It does matter for the actual service, because there's a change in charges from one service to another. Somebody has to pay for it. And on the results, which I provided with the report, you're seeing the results as a summary. And then I've also showed it to you as a per service detail. So, and that's just the administration, and that's using the 2023 or 2022 budget, sorry. So that, just to show you the comparison, if you take a look at, and all Penticton's at the very top, for the administration for a current option, it's 100,000 for Penticton. Option 1 is 125. Option 2 is 249. Option 3 is 158, and option 4 is 110. The difference is just the philosophies again. The next slide actually shows which of the options meet the philosophies, and only the current philosophy and option 4 meet all of the fairness check. And at the bottom of the formula summary talks about the different, how is it supported. So option 1, 80%, 20% capital, option 4, 88, 12, and then the different options, it varies. So with that, it's something that the board needs to determine how you want to see this. Now, I did supply the results as a summary and the results as a detail of, at 2022, we had 156 services. There was concern, there is a concern about charging the administration cost on capital projects, especially those that are grants. A majority of our capital projects are grant dependent. So if we start to charge for the capital admin only on those projects that don't have any grants, the few that are left will be hit with a full 20 or 12%, no matter, regardless of whichever option you use. And is that fair? One of the things that I want to stress too is if option 4 or 1 and option 4 is being recommended is used, at the end of the day, it reduces your operational costs, which allows the director to, if they wish, to increase the transfers to reserves. In transfers to capital reserves, for instance, operational reserves, which then gives you that much more money to fund other projects. So that's one of the benefits of having the option 4 or the current option. So I'm here to answer questions. You do have the summary for the summary and the actual results. There's, in one of the pages, I use the SIR and the SIR and the Okanagan Regional Library just as a guideline. If current option is used for the SIR, for instance, the administration cost will be $22,000 for current. Option 1 is $27,000. option 2 is 39, option 3 is 48, and option 4 would be 24,000. So the philosophy or the allocation that you use or choose today will materially adjust or change the budget. And whatever the board decides today, that's what I'll start using for the 2023 budget, which we've actually is started now. We've actually opened up 23 as of two weeks ago. So I'm here to answer any questions that the board may have.
Okay, Mr. Savino, I'll go to the board. Is there any questions or direction on this? Director Johansson, go ahead, please.
Thanks, Chair. My main concern when I brought this up is that it was more, not so much grant funded projects, but where there was borrowing associated and we were actually borrowing money to pay admin fees. I don't see that there's been much of a change here other than we just reduced the amount to 12%. Is that the case, CFO?
Go ahead, Jim.
Option 4 is the amount has been reduced, yes. The board can consider option 1, which is no administration charge on capital. The other thing too is I did say that we are heavily dependent on grants, but we're also heavily dependent on borrowing. And one of the things I said earlier is that by having this process, you're able to transfer more money into reserves. And if the majority of the time, there should be reserves to be able to fund the project through the administration on the operational reserve. It has to be operational reserves. But with the policy that the board set a year or so ago, any surpluses that happen are transferred to operational reserves. And you're not losing any power with that because operational reserves, you can use capital or operation. So the board can choose option 1, which again has no administration of capital. It does affect your operational reserve for the next year if that's what's chosen.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions, Director Holmes?
Thank you. So we've got it charted out here with under fairness. The reason option 1, 2, 3 doesn't get the fairness check is because it doesn't include capital. Well,
The reason that it's there. Okay, so the reason it's not checked off is the burden is, as far as I'm concerned, is there. But the formula doesn't recognize that burden should be there. The other thing too is if we're going to cost a capital project correctly, there should be something charged to it for the extra cost for the administration. That is part of the capital costs in any organization.
Okay.
Follow up.
Go ahead.
So would it be possible to do something like option 1 but include capital, or does that make it too complicated?
Option 1, including capital, is essentially the current, and option 4.
Okay.
That's what that is.
With the tiers.
With the tiers.
Thanks.
All right. Any further questions, Director Olbrich? Go ahead.
Yes, I have a comment, and I want to make a motion for option 4. My comment is a thank you to Mr. Zaffino for the work done. I appreciate the approach of the philosophy driven and the emphasis on finding an approach that's fair, recognizing it's not perfect. This is not perfect. It's an approach that tries to accommodate many variables by keeping the cost down using a formula rather than track all the time. I mean, the time tracking alone on this could end up costing a phenomenal amount, would be more accurate, but would also not save the same amount of money for the taxpayer. I also appreciate the good work of the board, and specifically Director Johansson. I think he raised a really good question about the borrowing and the challenge of charging a fee upon a borrowing and how do you balance that? And I appreciate that it's not perfect, is what I'm saying. But what I really appreciate even more is I think option 4 is a fine-tuning adjustment that's better than where we currently are. It's still not perfect. My final comment is we can come back again in a year or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5. Indeed, we should review this in the future again. And there may be ways to make it even better. But based on all I've seen, all I've heard over the last few years, I certainly don't see a better option right now than option 4. And my mind is open to be changed if somebody can show me a better one. I just don't see one. Thank you. I'd like to move option 4, please.
Okay, so you're moving option 4. Is there a seconder for that? It's seconded. Okay, it is on the floor. Thank you. We will continue with questions or discussion on this. First, asking for any further questions. I don't believe I'm seeing any hands. Well, thank you, Mr. Safino, for the... did I miss somebody? Whom did I miss? Oh, Mr. Vasilaki. Please, go ahead, Director Vasilaki.
Sorry.
You're muted.
Thank you. Through the chair to Jim, can you please tell me the difference? I know it's in the report, but I going through it, I can't see it right now. What would the difference be for Penticton from option 1 to option 4?
Go ahead, Jim.
So the current policy as it stands, Penticton pays $100,240
Okay.
consolidated. The option 4 is $110,484. So that's using 2022 budget numbers.
Okay. Thank you very much. Greatly appreciate it.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead, Director Holmes, question?
Yeah, what I don't quite understand, I guess, is, so the difference between the current policy and option 4 is it basically it moves from 20% to 12%.
Yes.
Right? So why then does everybody, every municipality, every electoral then pay more?
Because this is the operational side. So 8% more of the costs that were in capital are now in operational.
Oh, 8% more, not
Yes.
less.
No, because it's 8% less in capital.
Oh, okay.
So it goes to the
So this is
operational
the
side.
operational. So that moves.
It's-
So what we're looking at here is the 8% shifted to operation.
Correct.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay. Good point. Seeing any more hands? Go ahead, Director Johansson.
Thanks, Chair. I'd just like to follow up on Director Obrick's comments. I think it is a good tweak. It's not perfect, but it is better than what we were doing before, and I think helps smooth out some of the capital costs, especially when there's borrowing and grants associated with it. So I'd be in favor of going with option 4. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. Any further questions or comments? Trying not to miss any hands. I don't believe I am. We do have a motion on the floor, and that is to go with option 4 on this. So I will call the question on that motion. All those in favor, please raise your hands. Thank you very much. Any opposed? Is that an opposed hand? No, it went down. I don't think I see anybody opposed. If there is, or I missed someone, shout out so I can make that go on the record, but we'll call it carried. Thank you, Mr. Safino.
Well, thank you.
That does conclude our Corporate Services Committee agenda. So looking for a motion to adjourn. Moved, seconded, thank you. All in favor? Thank you very much. Any opposed? Motion carries. We are done a smidgen early here. Maybe we better take 5 or 10 minutes just before we go to community services, and we can make sure that I'm missing, oh, go ahead, CAO. You had a hand up?
I was just going to say, Mr. Chair, that it is still early and it's a half an hour until our delegation from the Associates Museum. If you did want me to give the Keremeos fire update now instead of later on at the board meeting, I could fill that time in.
Well, we can take some of that time for sure. Let's do that first, and then we'll take a short break before we go to community services. Go ahead, CAO, on the update.
Okay. All right. So, there. Let me get this. There we go. So I thought what I'd do is just, I've got a few pictures here. This is the southwest side of the fire as it is now, just going on. What I wanted to do, Mr. Chair, is I just want to provide just a brief overview of where we are. We're still early on in the Keremeos Creek fire, and it's a volatile, aggressive fire, so it's moving along pretty quickly. But as we start, we follow the same response goals that the Emergency Management BC does with their emergency incident command system. So, and these are prioritized. So it's always about health and safety of responders first, and then saving lives and reducing suffering, and then infrastructure, and then property, and then environment, and then economic and social loss. So it's a pretty structured response priority list that we follow as we go along. Just another picture of the fire from earlier on. It's along Highway 3. So I thought I'd give you a quick sequence of how we got activated and up to where we are now. And then at the end of this, we have our recommendation for the ratification of the state and local emergencies for ING. Because they can only last for 7 days, we have a recommendation to pre-approve the next week. And then we have to get the board's permission to send that in to the minister as well. So we'll do that at the end. I want to talk about communications because I know that's always an issue and of interest to elected officials. Just talk about how important our partners are to us, and then what we're doing in the Emergency Operations Center. And then I'll show you those recommendations on the state's and local emergency. So this is a map of the order and alert areas. And you can see, I'll point out some areas here if you can follow my cursor. This is Green Mountain Road. And this is where we first got the call from the ECC on Friday night. Came in about 20 to 7. By 7 o'clock, we were activated, and the fire was really aggressive on the west side of Green Mountain Road at that time. So we initially put on the order for about 21 properties on Green Mountain Road with an alert to another 21. And that is this area here. And then, and that was Friday evening. So, you know, really nobody left. So even though we were fully activated and emergency support services were ready and our registration center was up, we only had one property that registered with emergency support services. And then Friday night, the fire got really aggressive. It jumped the road, went on to the east side of Green Mountain Road, And that's when we lost that one structure. And but still, we only had 4 people registered with emergency support services. So we know why. They all have little hobby farms. They all have animals out there. They were staying to protect their animals, which we completely understand. But I'm going to talk later about the importance of leaving when an area is under order. So that's where it started. And then Saturday, the winds were somewhat volatile. They certainly weren't helping us out. They were moving to the south and the east on Friday evening, and that's why it jumped Green Mountain Road. So for those that were out or were able to see the fire, apparently it was quite a show Friday night. It was candling. And there were lots of sparks and little spot fires that were starting up everywhere. We overlaid our heat sensor map onto our dashboard, and you could see little spot fires just all over the place. That's why it jumped the road. It also went over into this area over here. It's called Sheep's Creek Road, and comes out on Highway 3A just before Yellow Lake. So in that area, but it was on the north side of that, closer to the Marin Valley, where it went on Friday night and then Saturday morning. So more orders and alerts out on that. And then it sparked up the hill. So Saturday, I mean, it was moving and it was growing. Overnight, it went from 60 hectares when it was first reported up over to 4 square kilometers over Friday night. So Saturday, it was growing exponentially. Where it was in the bottom of the valley on Green Mountain Road on Friday night. On Saturday, it started moving up both sides of the incline, and it was moving towards Apex Mountain Village on Saturday. So we initially put out the alert on that, and then later on, I believe it was on Sunday, we went to a full order for Apex Mountain, and I'll talk more about that in a second as well, just showing the progression of where this went. And then on Sunday and Monday, it's again, the winds were mostly south and east. And that's when that corridor along Highway 3A was impacted. So there were additional orders and alerts that were sent out all the way from, this is Yellow Lake right here on 3A. So back around the Twin Lakes area, all the way from there, and then eventually on Tuesday, I think it was, all the way down into Olalla. So that was a progression of it. It's about 2,790 hectares right now. So it went from that initial 60 up to almost 3,000 hectares. It is still growing. It was a windy afternoon yesterday, and that still has the fire. And in fact, the wind shifted. Instead of going from north to south, it changed for a bit and was going westerly or northwesterly. So it again impacted over here. I'm not going to report on the activities of BC Wildfire. They do a great job of doing that themselves. And we do have that briefing every day at 2 when BC Wildfire comes in and reports on what their activities are. But they also have that up on their BC Wildfire website. This is where we are right now. So these are the sites. Initially on Friday evening, when we started out, we were at an activation level 2 for our Emergency Operations Center. We only had the one site, but there were multiple agencies involved. So that for us is an activation level 2. We went to a level 3, I think it was on Sunday, because we started then separating the sites that we have. We have the Green Mountain Road site. We have the Sheep Creek Road North site. Apex Mountain Village, of course. And then we had, it moved from Sheep Creek Road South down to North Olalla. And then we also count our reception center as a site. So we have those 5 sites and we have multiple agencies. That's a level 3 activation for our emergency operations center. On the Green Mountain Road site, we had initially had 21, I think it was, properties under order. 1 was lost. We recounted and we had 19, but we had 73 alerts on Green Mountain Road. The properties on Green Mountain Road were interesting. Always, when we initiate an order, we hand deliver the orders to the properties in the ordered area. And we do that through the RCMP, and they usually dispatch a search and rescue organization to assist them with that. So in this case, it was Penticton Search and Rescue that were out late Friday night delivering those evacuation orders to Green Mountain Road. And what we found out was, well, we didn't have any building permits listed out in that area. We had the properties, but we didn't have any buildings. When we got out there, we found out that there were often 2 to 3 buildings on most of the properties, all occupied. And of course, just pitch black, and the fire at that point was kindling. And it was, I understand, an interesting activity on Friday night. But anyway, we lost the 1, 73 on order. Sheep Creek Road, that was on Saturday night. We had only initially 4 on order. Right now, we have 479 alerts out. There were 406 in that Sheep Creek Road North, Apex, and Sheep Creek Road South down to Olalla. We still do have the 73 over in the Green Mountain Road site, but we have a lot of concern with the way that it's a very volatile fire, and usually you can track the fire modelers. BC Wildfire has expert fire behavior and fire modeling staff, and they can usually tell just by looking at the terrain where it's going to go, or the winds or the moisture. They're having difficulty. It's going everywhere at this time. So we don't have a specific direction, but we know that we have 324 properties, mostly at Apex Village, under order, and we have 479 under alert, all throughout that area. And then our reception site. So we work with the city of Penticton to set up the reception and registration center. And then because we had so many properties on order, and because it is so difficult to get a hotel room in the Okanagan in the summertime, we thought we may need group lodging. So that is set up at Princess Margaret Secondary School on Green Avenue. And the city of Penticton runs that for us. And I know that they have called in all of the other ESS support services throughout the valley. So Osoyoos, Oliver, Summerland, they're all engaged, and they do a great job with registration and reception. And we're getting more now, and I'll report on that a little bit later. But initially, the registrations were pretty slow. But once we put Apex Mountain Village under order, group lodging was set up, and that's when we went down to Princess Margaret. So let me talk a bit about communications. It always is such a vital part of any emergency operations center, not just during wildfire season, but during the flood season as well, or any of those other egregious situations we seem to be getting into these days. We work so with our communications and our public information section out of the EOC, they work really closely with local, regional, and national media. And that is one of the best ways that we have of getting information out to the public is through the media. And they're very good also at doing their own research. We're always, we seem to be a little bit slower because we have that need to verify information, but they're just excellent to work with in an emergency situation when we need to get information out really quickly. We've done 22 posts on the various websites, so either on our corporate regional district site or on the emergency operations site. So 22 different posts over that. Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. So we've only been at this 5 days, but we're keeping the sites as current as possible. We've done 50 social media posts. We've coordinated 4 live video updates, and they've had over 15,000 views so far between those 4 updates. Those are the ones we do at 2 o'clock each day. And then with those, there has also been video updates broadcast on Castanet, Global BC1, Shaw Spotlight, and some others that have been broadcasting our video updates. And then for orders and alerts, we use that Voyant Alert app in order to contact those that have signed up with us that are in those specific order or alert areas. So there are so many people involved in a successful emergency response. And I mean, you're always nervous that you're going to miss somebody, but nevertheless, I want to give some recognition to those that are out there working with us. This is a sign that the Penticton Indian Band put up when we decided that we needed to evacuate Apex Village. Of course, Green Mountain Road goes through the Penticton Indian Band, and with all of that traffic, and it's not an easy road to travel. And they were very good at helping us with security and traffic management, and then also patrolling on their reserve, because people would often get off and start going through the reserve. So this is just an example of one way that we partner with different organizations. When we first start an activation, we usually get a call from the Provincial Emergency Communications Center or the Provincial Regional Emergency Operations Center. In this case, it came right from Preoc into our duty phone on Friday night, and they have been on our wing throughout the whole exercise. So they're the ones that we send our expense authorization requests in to, and they're the ones that approve it. So they help us with that. And they're a coordination group. So if we need a contact with anybody, they're the ones that help us out with getting the right person. BC Wildfire was right on scene. I mean, they were active even before we got activated. And of course, they're the ones then that will phone Preoc and say, look, we need the Emergency Operations Center from the local government up and running in order to provide support. So over Friday and Saturday, BC Wildfire, and of course, they have the responsibility for this group that we work with for the central region. And then they're also looking provincially as well. On Saturday, when it became evident that this was going to be a large event, they assigned an incident management team to the Carameas Creek wildfire. And they came in on Saturday, and I believe they took over the operation, I think on Sunday at noon. They started coming in on Saturday. They got here, got briefed, and took over the event at noon. And they initially set up at Kings Park in Penticton, but now have moved down to Oliver. They're a self-sufficient group, and they set up their own camp. So they're on the scene, and we're in close communication with them on a regular basis. We've had a marvelous response from all of our structural fire departments within the regional district, but in an event like this, especially when you're evacuating a community like an Apex, we need I don't have the exact numbers. BC Wildfire will be producing those for us at the appropriate time, but I know their structure. This isn't a unified command, so BC Wildfire ground air a bit separate from the structure firefighting right now, but I believe there's probably 140 firefighters within the regional district from all of those volunteer and career fire departments that have responded on a mutual aid sort of basis. So it's just truly an amazing response that we get from these departments that are all too often getting tasked with supporting other locations than just their own. So really good work there. Apex Mountain Fire Department is coordinating the protection of Apex up there right now, and I know there's lots and lots of firefighters up there. And they've been participating in our 2 o'clock briefings as well to give the structure side of it. When we get an indication that we're going to have to evacuate an area, we always rely on the RCMP to coordinate the delivery of those for us, and then also to work on helping us get people out and to close roads and make sure that it happens in an orderly fashion. They usually dispatch through PREOC, they'll dispatch a search and rescue organization. So in this case, it was PENSAR. They were out there on Friday evening. They've been with us all through the various evacuation orders that we've done over the past 5 days. And City Penticton does an amazing job at setting up a registration, reception, and when required, group lodging. And so we treat them as a site now. We're in support. They're the front lines, so they work with their emergency support services function. And again, they've called in a lot of other organizations throughout the valley, but the City Penticton is the one that sets up, in this case, for all of those people that need help that have been evacuated. So again, emergency support services, when somebody's in an evacuation order area, they can get that financial support and accommodation and food. And I'm going to show you a table here later of what we've got going on. But those on alert also get information from ESS as to what they need to do to prepare, so they perform a vital role. And I've been keeping in touch with my colleague, the CAO at the City of Penticton, who we rely on heavily as well, because we also bring in resources into our EOC from the city. They're quite helpful there. In fact, I know we've got people in our EOC from the City of Penticton today. I saw Ronnie coming in to do our GIS for us this morning when I was over there getting information. In addition to the emergency support services, they work with the Animal Lifeline emergency team on the animal side of it, because I mean, one of the most stressful situations is if somebody has to evacuate and they've got animals, is making sure they get their animals taken care of. So as soon as an area goes on alert, the Animal Lifeline group is in there working with people to try and make sure they keep their animals safe. And I know they're going down to the desert center with a lot of the animals from these order areas right now. No, I'll give you actually, maybe I'll do that right now. So right now, we have 179 people registered with emergency support services. We have 47 in accommodation, and we've been fortunate enough to find hotel rooms for them. We have 124 that they're supporting with food, 15 that they've supported with clothing, and 25 with incidentals. They've also got 10 families that are billeting. So if people phone ESS and register to billet, we'll put evacuees into private homes as well. So they've got that. And I didn't write down the numbers from alert, but I know that they've taken care of chickens, horses, donkeys, cats, dogs, miniature horses. There's all sorts of things that they do. They do not do cattle. So the Ministry of Agriculture has a list of registered cattle farmers in the various areas, and they work with the BC Cattlemen's Association in order to move that part of the livestock, because often they're too numerous for alert to take care of. Just another picture of the fire. You can see this is from BC wildfire. This is very difficult terrain. They had real trouble getting in with ground crews initially to the site, just because of the terrain and the undergrowth. And they also had trouble getting in with their airplanes. So oftentimes they'll use water bombers for large areas. They couldn't do that this time because of the terrain that they were flying in. So they initially started out with a couple of helicopters. And then when the incident management team comes in, they bring their resources with them. So they had a whole bunch of other inexperienced pilots on helicopters, and I believe they are now using the water bombers in support in some areas. Within our Emergency Operations Center, I know it's somewhat of a mystery as to what we're doing all the time. We'll often have, I know in this event, ever since Friday night, we've had 20 to 25 people working in our Emergency Operations Center. With the number of agencies that we're involved with in order to, did I go past that? Let me just make sure. I didn't finish my list of partners that we were working with. I got sidetracked at ESS. We have 3 bands that are affected. So reserve areas that are within the fire perimeter. Penticton Indian Band probably the most, but the Lower Similkameen Indian Band and the Upper Similkameen Indian Band are also implicated. As the fire moved into Area G, the Upper Similkameen Indian Band was brought into it, and Lower Similkameen Indian Band from previous. So we're working closely with the Penticton Indian Band. All of their emergency operations centers are activated, and they have their own emergency program coordinators. And in fact, the emergency program coordinator for the Okanagan Nation Alliance, Don Russell, has been into our EOC on a daily basis, always there for our briefings first thing in the morning, and then passes news along to the emergency program coordinators for each of the band. And then we also see them at the incident management team meetings on a daily basis as well. They're invited into those. There's also been a participation from Interior Health. So when we put an area on alert, Interior Health has a list of vulnerable people, and they will go in and move them first. Even when they're on alert, they'll try and get in and move the vulnerable population before it becomes an order. So we're working closely with them, Emergency Health. And then I already mentioned the media and the part that they play in helping us getting news out. And I know there's others I probably missed, but those are some that I wanted to mention specifically. So within our Emergency Operations Center, the liaison in our Emergency Operations Center is responsible for keeping track and in constant communication with all of those agencies that we partner with. And it's a busy job, and that position is always out at meetings and trying to keep on track of what everybody's doing and to get them the information and the right contacts they need in order to do their job. Our information section, did I do that? No. So part of the responsibility is public information. So that's why they're so involved in getting all that information that I talked about previously, like the media briefings and the updates on the web and the Voyant Alert and those news releases that we send out, communicating out the orders and the alerts. They do all of that. And it's a busy job. We often have 3 or 4 people. For the first time, this time we put, with the permission of the City of Penticton, we put an information officer down at the reception center. Because when people are evacuated or they're on alert, you can never get enough information. Everybody's because decisions have to be made instantly. So we put an information officer down at the reception center to help out the City of Penticton and make sure there's good communication between reception, registration, ESS, and our EOC, so that they had the most up-to-date information that we had. So a busy group and takes lots of resources. Our operations section is mostly the one that keeps in touch with the first responders. So they're always in touch with BC Wildfire, RCMP, structure firefighters. Their job is to support those that are out working the sites, and they do a good job at that. As soon as we send out an evacuation order, we are responsible for providing security to make sure that other people can't get into those evacuated areas. So operations is responsible then for putting checkpoints up on the road, working with MOTI to close roads, and making sure that only those that have permission go into the evacuated areas. The RCMP puts out roving cars through the evacuated areas, and we want to make sure that we keep people's property as safe as possible. The other side of that is that once people are out, they often find that they've forgotten something or they want to get back in to pick something up. So our operations section administers the temporary access permits, but they're pretty stingy about letting people go back in. They're usually just working with alert once, because you can't leave animals, obviously, without any sort of protection. Our planning section is the one that is responsible for taking the information from BC Wildfire. They'll get what's called a shape map. They'll identify all of the addresses through GIS, the property owners attached to each of those properties, and they'll put the evacuation order together in the form that we send it out in. So they're the ones that identify the properties, do the maps, get those over to communications so that they can send them out. Then we also send them into pre-oc once we do an order or an alert. So all of those, the 800 or so properties that are under either alert or order all go through the planning section. That's their immediate priority, but they're also responsible then for future planning. So as soon as we're starting to move people out or put them on alert, we're also starting to think about, okay, how do we get them off of order or alert? And we have to then go back in and prepare re-entry kits and make sure that we have the necessary security as to how people go back in, just a lot of work. If a fire or a flood has been through an area, then we have to do the rapid damage assessments to make sure that the properties are safe. Because if there's electrical or other damage to a house, you can't let people go back in unsafely. All sorts of things that have to happen with re-entry. And then we also start looking at sort of the future plan. So they would be the ones responsible for doing the after action report and the briefings and the hot wash and that sort of thing. So ongoing job for them. Logistics is the one that will prepare our expense authorization applications to pre-oc. So they'll get a request from one of our either operations or planning, and they'll put together the expense authorization form and send it in and track it and make sure that we're filling in all of those forms that are required. And then same with finance and administration. It's always after the event when the accountants and the lawyers come out, but it's important that that documentation is done correctly. So a lot of work done. Logistics also supports our teams. So they take care of the Emergency Operations Center and care and comfort of those working in the Emergency Operations Center. We also, this year, for the first time, are responsible for the structure firefighters. So they put resource requests in through the EOC, and we've been working closely with the Apex Fire Department on that to coordinate fire department resources. The EOC, once an event, well, I mean, the duty phone is always active, but once an event is underway and the EOC is activated, it requires 24/7 coverage. And we will have 20 participants or more. I know there were at least 25 in the briefing this morning. So busy place once we're in an event. So here are the recommendations that we're making, Mr. Chair, and I've got 2 slides on this, but this first one is about the ratification of the state of local emergency that you issued for Area I on Friday night, and then for Area G on Monday. So I would need somebody to put those on the floor, Mr. Chair.
We'll have to do that in the regular meeting, the board meeting.
Oh, yes, sorry. Forgot we were in committee. So yeah, so I'll have to put these back up later on in the board meeting. I'll do it under the CAO's report. And then these are the rest of them. Because we're almost at the end of that first week, and under the Emergency Program Act, the local government can only call a state of local emergency for 7 days. We're going to be proactive and just get the orders for next week ratified, and then the authorization to send them into the Minister of State. So that's my report, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. We are 10:31, which is time to start the Community Services Committee. So I will go to Director Monteith.
Alrighty, I'd like to call the Community Service Committee meeting to order. Anybody would like to make a motion to approve the agenda?
Sorry, Chair, we can't hear Director Monteith.
Just one sec, we've got to move the microphone around again here.
Sorry about that, I'll start again. So I'd like to call the Community Service Committee meeting to order. I'd like to have a motion to accept the agenda as presented. First, second, all in favor? Perfect, thank you. So item B, we have a delegation from the Suius Museum Society to CAO, please.
Oh, thanks, Madam Chair. Yeah, so I'm looking forward to this myself. We work closely.
There's like a wind noise. We can't hear you, Bill.
A wind noise?
Is everybody else getting that? Okay.
So it's either my office or yours that has drafty windows. Could likely be mine. So we worked closely with the Soyuz Museum Society a few years ago when they were moving buildings, and we happened to also be able to provide a grant. Initially, as they were getting organized, we continued to lease out the building to a hardware store, and we accumulated that, and we were able to provide that funding to them to put into their new improved museum in Osoyoos. So I'm looking forward to hearing how we're doing down there. So we'll turn this over to the delegation, Madam Chair.
All right, to the delegation, please.
Hi, everybody, to the board staff and all of you watching at home. Thank you for the opportunity to address you here today. My name is Martha Collins, and I'm the president of the Osoyoos Museum Society. And along with my colleague, Kara Burton, we are going to give you an update on the new museum and an overview of what lies ahead. Obviously, with the pandemic, there have been challenges, but over the last 2.5 years, the support of our community has been amazing. As you'll see, the museum has benefited by hundreds of thousands of volunteer hours led by our project manager, Larry Stone. Under Larry's leadership, 90% of the subcontractors were local businesses, so the investment remained in our community. Phase 1 of the project, the main floor and the mezzanine, was completed in December of 2020. Phase 2 construction began in January of this year, consisting of the multi-purpose room, archive and artifact rooms, washrooms, workroom, and the progress has been steady. When you walk into the museum, everything that you see, with the exception of the artifacts, is brand new. Since receiving the keys on January 2nd, 2020, well over $1 million has been invested into the building. We cannot emphasize enough our gratitude that the museum is truly a community initiative. Over the last 2.5 years, various businesses and individuals have been very generous. Even during the global pandemic, we have received over $200,000 in donations. And while we could not do any active fundraising events, our community has supported the project every step of the way. Finally, in March of this year, we were able to have an event, and we partnered with Rotary to have trivia night, and we hope to make that an annual event. Last year, we applied for a Pacific Can grant of $310,000 to complete Phase 2, as well as the Urban Heritage Park that will be located between Dolce Tai and the museum. We trust that we will be successful in receiving this grant, and if we are, we'll finish off the project in 4 to 6 months after receiving the funding. So thank you to the RDOS for all of your support over the years. And when it is time, please know that you're all invited to the grand opening so that we can all raise a glass together and celebrate the completion of the Osoyoos Museum. So thank you.
I'll just share my screen quickly, and I've got a few slides to show you some of the work that we've done. So just let me. There we go. Okay, so as Martha already introduced, my name is Kara Burton. I'm the Executive Director and Curator at the museum here. Some of you may recognize this photo. This was when we first got started. The museum was established in 1963 for the express purpose of collecting, protecting, preserving, and providing access to the artifacts and information regarding the history of the Osoyoos area. We focus primarily on the community of Osoyoos, in part because we've got such a fabulous cultural center here, as well as the Desert Center, which look after the natural side of things. We are run by a volunteer board of directors, and we have 2 employees, myself and our collections manager. Our annual budget is approximately $100,000 a year, and that funding is provided through a variety of sources, including the town of Osoyoos, the regional district, grants, fundraising, and donations. For a number of years now, we've been working towards getting into this building at 8702 Main Street. And once we took possession, January 2nd, 2020, we immediately got down to work renovating. So these are some photos of the renovation work. We completely gutted the building right down to the concrete walls. The mezzanines that were here all got torn down. And as Martha mentioned, most of the work was done by volunteers. We had an incredible crew that would come in daily for close to the entire year of 2020 to get the work done. Everything when you walk in the door, all the building features are new electrical, new plumbing. We installed an elevator. We installed a new stairwell to the lower level, a new mezzanine for our offices. Everything was built to code, fire suppression systems, everything brand new. As Martha also mentioned, the majority of the work was done by local contractors and subtrades, which we were very fortunate to have their support. In addition to them doing the work, most of the companies also contributed to the project financially through in-kind donations, deals, discounts, and quite a few of them looking out for us once COVID hit as far as increased pricing was concerned to help us keep the cost as low as possible. These are some photos of us moving in some of the artifacts. As you can imagine, some of them it's quite the process, especially the log building. It had to be, every log was labeled. It was completely dismantled, kind of like a giant Lincoln log project, and then rebuilt within the new facility. We had to have cranes bring in some of the objects, a little zoom boom that had to bring in some of the large items. And again, we worked through a variety of volunteer labor to move things, a local moving company, and me and my minivan to get most of it, the small stuff up here. We've also been really, really pleased with all the financial support and community support that we've had. We've had a unbelievable response to donation requests. Local businesses, local companies holding small fundraising events at their businesses. Fields Osoyoos held a year-long fundraising event where 1% of all their sales came towards the project. Others would donate a certain amount of, what they felt was within their giving. Osoyoos Home Hardware has donated over $3,000 worth of trees for the Urban Heritage Park once we get to there through a grant that they got through Tree Canada. We received a grant for $11,000 from the Osoyoos Credit Union to help with the installation of the elevator. And we've also have a financial commitment from the Osoyoos Rotary Club to go towards our multi-purpose room, which then they will be able to use for their weekly meetings. Moving forward, we have our next step is to get some archival murals that we've had produced. Those are those 4 bottom images there, and they will all be installed on the outside, 3 of them on the east side of the building and 1 on the west side of the building. So we're quite excited to get those installed. And our main priority right now is to complete the lower level of the building, which will house our archives room, our artifact storage, some work rooms for working with the artifacts and working on new exhibits, additional washrooms and general storage, as well as the multi-purpose room, which will be really key for our educational programs and meetings and public presentations and that type of thing. After the lower level is done, our next focus will be the outdoor space to the west of the building. And that is the space that we'll be developing into an urban heritage park with some education on agriculture locally. And it'll also have space for small events. We are starting to work with community groups and have an upcoming event that we're in planning with the Lake Water Quality Board to do a demonstration of what they do and inspections for boats and that type of thing. So we're quite excited to get into that type of stuff. We've also, now that the renovation is coming to completion, we're working towards getting back to sort of museum work as opposed to the renovation work. And to that end, we had a group of university students that we produced and worked on a field study course with them. So we had 8 university students here for the first 2 weeks of May working on research, and they've all written articles that will be sent out for publishing to various magazines that promote Osoyoos and the history of the area and what we're doing locally here. We're also quite excited to be able to start bringing in some traveling exhibits. Starting this fall, we'll be bringing in an exhibit from the Kelowna Museum called Waterways, and that will coincide with the Water Basin Board conference that should go ahead since it was postponed from the spring. And traveling exhibits was something that we weren't able to do in the old building due to the climate control and that type of thing. So we're quite excited to get into that type of stuff. We're currently open now. We've closed down the renovation work for the summer months so that we can be open to the public. So we're open 5 days a week right now. And we're averaging about 25 people a day, which is we're quite thrilled with, considering that I think our average at the old building was about 10 people per day. So it's been quite an improvement for us here. And while this has been a longer than planned project, we're quite grateful for all the support that we have received from the community, from the district, from local businesses and individuals. And we're pleased with what we've been able to accomplish over the last 2 years. And we're quite confident that when the project is complete, this facility will be a lasting legacy for the community and something that our town will be quite proud of.
There's definitely a lot going on in Osoyoos.
Yeah.
Any questions from anybody on the board? Director McCornoff.
Thank you very much. And I just want to say how happy we are that Kara and Martha are here to present this. They've done an amazing job over the last several years through COVID, through moving, and Kara is right. She has moved a lot of the artifacts in her minivan, which isn't that new. So we're quite concerned that she's going to send us a bill for repairs on it. But you know, I've been in the facility several times in the last couple of years watching the changes and seeing all the volunteers. And we're just darn lucky. So thank you very much for presenting this. And we certainly look forward to having a glass of wine at the grand opening very soon. So thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions for our delegation? Director Pendergraft.
Yeah, I would also just like to thank the Museum Society and everybody involved with that project. It's been a great thing to see come to fruition, and the building looks great, and I am looking forward to the grand opening as well. So thanks very much for all your efforts.
Thank you. Seeing no further questions, thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
If there's no further business, I'd like to call for a motion to close the meeting. Adjourn, sorry.
Adjourn.
First, second, all in favor? Thank you. Chair.
Okay, thank you, Director Monteith. We will go to Environment and Infrastructure Committee, and I will go to Director Gettens to chair that one. Please, go ahead.
Thanks, Chair. Just before I begin, is our delegation here? We've got a delegation.
I would.
We're a little bit early, but
We are. Let's just take a quick peek here. Or is the delegation on there, Danny?
Yeah.
I'm trying to open it, but they may not be.
Okay, should we just wait until 11?
Yeah, let's take a few minute break until we get the delegation online.
Sounds
Hello, everybody again. We will get started with the Environment and Infrastructure Committee meeting. So Director Gettens, please go ahead, get us going.
Perfect, thank you. So I'll call the meeting to order at 10:59 a.m. If I can get a motion to adopt the agenda, please. Thank you, and a seconder, please. Great, thank you very much. All in favor? Any opposed? No, thank you. And I'll just let everybody know that I've got a bad cough, which is why I'm wearing my mask in the boardroom today, because I don't want to share that with anybody else. So if you hear me coughing, it's not COVID. I've tested myself. But we do have a delegation today. It's at the Meadow Valley Aquifer Study. So I'm just going to pass this over to you, CAO, please.
Thanks, Madam Chair. So I'm hoping that we have our delegation here. I'm not sure about that, but we do have Associated Environmental that has done the Meadow Valley Aquifer Study, and they are here to present their preliminary findings from that, and then we can discuss where we're going to go. So if we do have Marta Green and Stephen Colebrook and Dylan Riley, then we'll just turn it over to them, Madam Chair.
Marta. So maybe I'll just pass it to you, Ms. Green, and you can carry on, and then, and introduce your team to us, please. Go ahead.
Oh, you're muted.
We can't hear you.
All right, I'll try that. How's that?
Yep, great, thank you.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you, Chair. Thank you for inviting me. Today, I only have my colleague Dylan Riley. Steve Colebrook is drilling a water supply well for the Upper Similkameen Indian Band. And luckily, it's nice and cool this week, and they're coming from the west, so they're safe. Yeah, you guys are all making me hungry. Yeah, so I guess I've got some slides here, so I'll share my screen. Get that PowerPoint going. All right. How's that look?
That's great, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, so I am calling in here from Vernon, just up the road from you folks. I do have some connections to the South Okanagan, though. I moved up here with my husband, who was born and raised in Summerland, and I quite enjoy recreating in that area. And my my in-laws are in the agricultural community, and water is always an important topic, and the South Okanagan has always been a leader in managing water use. But we can't take the eye off the prize. It's a constant balance between growth and water management. Water, as everyone knows here, is not infinite, so it definitely plays a role in all decisions we make. So this project was just a continuation of the really great work that the Okanagan, including yourselves, have done regarding water. All right, so from this study, we looked to answer two questions. We wanted to look at if the Falder Community Water System has enough groundwater supply now and into the future, and then also the other areas of what we'll be referring to as Aquifer 299 that will rely on private water wells and the Meadow Valley Irrigation District. So when I talk about growth and the future, what am I thinking about? So growth can be a change in land use. So for example, you could have more farming, or you could have more people using their water for indoor or outdoor purposes. And we also need to consider climate change. So just to put some context on where we are looking and the study area. So on the left of your screen is the bird's eye view here. So obviously we're on the west side of Okanagan Valley here. We are within the Dark Creek catchment and the Trout Creek catchment. And interesting to see that these catchments actually go, well, the Trout Creek goes all the way west to Thirsk Lake. I'm sure everyone probably knows that, but what's interesting with this slide is it actually goes quite close to the connector. So there are some 1,000-meter elevation mountains. So not the highest mountains in the Okanagan. If up here at Silver Shore we're at 1,600, but you still have some upper elevation areas within your watershed. And Aquifer 299 is known as the Meadow Valley Aquifer. It's been mapped by the provincial government, and you'll see it's depicted here in a variety of colors because, as you'll see, I did have to break up the aquifer because there are some significant differences in recharge that are important when considering groundwater availability. So you can kind of see it basically not from Garnet Lake, but just above and west of Garnet Lake. So that's showing in the blues. There's a little red zone where the aquifer actually pinches out. And then there's the Falder area, which is hidden by Dark Creek because it's super skinny. And then the Trout Creek portion of the aquifer in yellow. So we'll be talking about that later. All right, so originally the RFP requested, we had proposed to do an aquifer budget where you take in quantitative calculations, measurements of all of the inputs into the aquifer box and all the outputs. But we quickly realized the data just was not there to be able to be so quantitative. So we kind of shifted and realized the purpose of the report could be met. We could meet the objectives of the study by just clarifying the conceptual model of groundwater flow, updating previous available information, adding a climate change component to it, and using these multiple lines of evidence to support some conclusions around groundwater availability. So here you can see on the top right there, that's Dark Lake. That is one of the important recharge areas. Sorry, just get rid of that phone call. I thought I put myself in Do Not Disturb. And on the top left is, of course, Trout Creek. And on the bottom left is one of the diversions that the Meadow Valley Irrigation District manages. And we also have an example of a private well on the bottom right. All right, so quickly we'll just review some hydrogeology concepts. So let's put ourselves back into school here. It's interesting how frequently just general concepts of groundwater and groundwater flow is missed. In fact, there's a mistake in this not too old map here that seems to show that there's an aquifer. There isn't an aquifer under this pink, but of course, groundwater occupies pores in all land below the water table, and it's just a matter of how porous the media is to relate back to how much groundwater will be flowing through the aquifer. So this should all be colored as well as pink. So groundwater is part of the water cycle. All groundwater is recharged by infiltrating rain and snowmelt. As I mentioned, it exists in the spaces between sand grains or in the bedrock fractures. Groundwater is slow moving. A fast groundwater system in a gravelly deposit moves up to 1 meter a day. So people are quite interested when I mention that sometimes it takes years to travel from important recharge area on the edges of a valley to the valley bottom wells. Ultimately, because groundwater is part of the water cycle, it does discharge again back to surface water. And a concept you might hear quite frequently from me today is this concept around a losing stream reach. So groundwater is fed, as I mentioned, through infiltrating rain and snowmelt. However, some people think it just goes in quite evenly, and maybe that's the case in flat areas like the prairies. In BC, we have mountains and very, very, very skinny valley bottoms. So one of the very important recharge areas are these mountainside creeks that are bedrock constrained in the mountains, and as they arrive at the valley bottom, they go on top, they flow on top of our sands and gravels. And in that period where they switch from mountainside to valley bottom, the creek beds are often quite gravelly, quite porous, and that's where a lot of your recharge comes from. So that is sort of depicted in this spot. I'm not sure if you can see my mouse here, where you've got the water coming down from this reservoir, and then these two arrows pointing towards the aquifer. That would be considered a losing stream reach. Further down in discharge, natural discharge areas of groundwater, you do see groundwater then discharging to a river, and that would be considered a gaining reach. All right, thank you, Lisa, for helping me with this graph. This is the conclusion of our study. I'm putting it up front because I will then continue to talk about evidence that supports this. So we've divided the Aquifer 299 into 4 aquifer subregions: North Meadow Valley, South Meadow Valley, North Falder, and Trout Creek. And why this was important is because there are 2 different recharge methods that bring water to the aquifer. That is important when you talk about groundwater availability. So the Trout Creek aquifer, which includes the Falder community water service area, the wells that are providing the water to that service area, they are being recharged predominantly from Trout Creek, from losing stream portions of Trout Creek up gradient of Falder, whereas North Meadow Valley, South Meadow Valley, and the private individual wells that people may use to supplement their community supply in North Falder, those are all being recharged by Dark Creek. So we'll go through a series of conclusions from our report, and we will go from north to south, and this will kind of just reinforce that last slide. All right, so North Valley. So I know this map is super detailed, but I tried to add some big arrows to show groundwater to flow direction. All right, so the North Meadow Valley area, which is Fish Lake Road. You guys would probably be more familiar with where this divide is than me. We don't have an exact landmark. Of course, this is being recharged from Dark Creek as the creek goes from kind of a bedrock constrained mountainside creek into the valley bottom along Fish Lake Road. We do have the Okanagan Nation Alliance has been active in this area. They've put in a flow monitoring station too on Dark Creek in June 2020. So we're just getting 2 years of data, which is very excellent. And so as you can see here, the contours are quite tight, and then it opens up into your valley. When it hits the valley bottom, it flows radially or in basically in a semicircle, like an alluvial fan, and that's where you have a bit of a groundwater divide where water will be flowing north on the north side of the divide and groundwater will be flowing south on the south side of the divide. So for the North Meadow Valley aquifer, it flows north and then it discharges to Auckland Spring. It may go all the way to Garnet Lake. All right, so why are we saying that this might be likely fully allocated in dry years? So the aquifer is thin. It's about 10 meters thick. So what I look at, these are actual contours that Dylan Riley painstakingly drew up. So this is science in hydrogeology terms. These are little symbols or little water table symbols, and the screen is the line sections. So you can see the scale we're looking at here is, maximum 20 meters going, but there you've got some clays and silts and grays and only your sands and the white portions. So if the water can only pass through the sands at a rate that is functional and usable for farmers and domestic use. It's a really thin aquifer. The wells are already pretty much drilled to the bottom of the sandy portion, and we've heard of complaints of low water levels in some years and dry years. Climate has wetter years and drier years, as you're all quite familiar with that. So because the aquifer is thin, because there's already been reports of dry wells in some years, yes, some years will be great. The water table will go up. You have it. But when we think about incorporating climate change, as we will explain later on, you're probably already as good as you get. All right, South Meadow Valley Aquifer Subregion is also likely fully allocated in dry years. So this area, as I mentioned, is also recharged from Dark Creek. There's that groundwater divide as Fish Lake comes across. There it is there. And you do have water that travels south here. What we are hypothesizing based on the multiple lines of evidence that we reviewed and developed during our study is that only in wetter years is there enough thickness in your aquifer to actually cascade down to the North Boulder area. So this is what we're calling a pinch point, this red area down in the bottom right corner. So in dry years, there could be perhaps no groundwater flow continuing to North Boulder. All right, so what other evidence do we have that it's likely fully allocated in dry years? Again, here it's you can see it's got an interesting bedrock shape at the bottom of the valley that is then filled with the sands and gravel sediments after periods of glacial melt. And so you can see, sure, it's thick in one spot, but then it really shallows out there, and people are drilling right to the bedrock, and you only have a very small area where it's a bit thicker here. Same thing, we've heard of low levels, reports of low levels and Dark Creek is ephemeral at this stage, but also in the groundwater wells in dry years. So any pumping in this area would impact other users in this area and would draw the water table down enough that pretty much no flow would be available to go to North Boulder. All right, so moving now to North Boulder here. Again, our hypothesis, and we debated this in-house, that there is a groundwater pinch out point, and it's just a very narrow aquifer, and there is just not an opportunity. There's not enough space for groundwater to move. Basically, if you imagine a pipe filled with sands and gravels, and the water moving between each sand grain, there's just physically, through pipe dynamics, not very much space to allow for very much movement to this area of the aquifer. You are probably getting recharge from Dark Creek when it's flowing as a losing stream at this point. So that would be your main charge of recharge, main source of recharge there. And we could obviously put in some hydrometric stations and prove that out further, but it kind of makes sense with the other evidence we have that supports this. Groundwater then flows and discharges towards the Trout Creek aquifer. So again, here it's quite a thin aquifer. I've tried to show this water table symbol a little bit stronger here with the water table in general from all the well logs, so you can see the bedrock undulates, and depending on where you are, you could have all of the wells are already drilled to the bottom of the aquifer, sand and gravel aquifer. People are already trying to find water into the bedrock portion, meaning that they're just not able, the drillers are not able to get enough thick sequence of wet sands and gravels to be even able to put in a 5-foot screen. And there are obviously, as we know, local reports of dry wells and dry years. All right, so then we get to the Trout Creek Valley Aquifer subregion. And here you're likely not fully allocated for individual domestic wells. So just a reminder, domestic wells are defined by the Water Sustainability Act as any use for a single resident and their uses as part of their home. So it includes water for your pets, water for some landscaping, 1,000 square meter garden, and obviously all indoor watering use. It also allows for some fire protection. So non-domestic use is any irrigation for crops or pasture, any manufacturing, industrial, any business. And that is regulated and managed by Ministry of Forests. So here we've got evidence. Golder has done some research, and it kind of matches what we're thinking here, that recharge is coming from this concept, this losing stream concept again, but from Trout Creek upstream of Falder. One of our recommendations, perhaps look into this a bit further. We don't know exactly where is the recharge component happening. But as you could see from an earlier slide, the catchment area for Trout Creek is actually quite a lot larger. And the aquifer is quite a lot thicker. We've got 40 meters here at your second well, the FCW2 well. And just another conclusion is your Falder community wells will not be impacted by groundwater use in the North Falder aquifer. So if individuals have their small wells, just older wells, historical wells that they're using to feed, to water their livestock or their pets or have a nice garden or landscaping, because you're getting the bulk of the water from a losing stream scenario from Trout Creek, I'm not worried about people using the water and drying up the North Falder aquifer. So I just wanted to put this slide up here again, just to reiterate the point. We've got 3 subregions that are predominantly being recharged by Dark Creek, and 1 subregion that's predominantly recharged from a losing stream region, Trout Creek. And this is really important when we consider groundwater availability in each of these regions. All right, so after we did our background research, we then hired Ron Fratwell, who's a contractor that does a lot of work with the Ministry of Agriculture, Denise Nielsen, and the Okanagan Water Demand Project, where they went out and they mapped every single land use in agricultural land. Is agricultural land being supplied by surface or groundwater? So you can, and then they also added some climate change scenarios, all sorts of GCN concepts that we don't need to describe here, but the conclusions are that groundwater will be impacted, groundwater availability will be impacted from climate change in 2 ways. First, you have the water supply impacts. So as we might not all know, the annual precip will actually go up because hotter air can hold more water. So as water gets evaporated in the ocean and moves east across the Okanagan, there is actually on an annual basis more recharge, more precipitation. So that's great. However, with warming temperatures, we will have more rain than snow, and the period of precipitation may also change, and we may have more rapid melting in spring. Connecting all of that to recharge to groundwater is an emerging science, let's call it. And so one could argue on one hand, you have more rain, groundwater gets recharged quite well from rain if it's done at clear and cool temperatures when there's not a lot of evapotranspiration, also wanting that precip. And if there's enough to go into the ground, but not too much to run off. So that's one angle. And then the other angle is if we have more storms, but they're extreme weather, maybe that's all just going to run off and not have an opportunity to slowly percolate into the ground. On the water demand side, there's a lot more research that's been done in that, and I'm sure You've heard all of this before, longer, hotter summers, and we did get some actual quantitative numbers to support this. We're going to have up to a 44% increase in demands across in one of these subregions. The demands will go up in all subregions, and I'm guessing the subregion it goes up the most is the one that has the most agricultural use, and that's for the 2058 climate scenario. All right, so Lisa really wanted me to make sure we focus on the Falder community wells because that is a service that the RDOS provides. And so, of course, you want to manage that service really well. So in this area, it's interesting. I just finished telling you that there's ample water available from what we could tell in the Trout Creek portion, Trout Creek Aquifer subregion of Aquifer 299. However, the Water Sustainability Act came into effect in 2016, and as part of that, there was a transitional period that expired on March 1st, 2022 to allow existing groundwater users to be brought into the water license fold and basically, in essence, being grandfathered. Unfortunately, the RDOS applied for what they thought was a more reasonable existing use application volume, but the province came back and said, nope, we will only give you what you've been metered for. And I have an argument that that's not fair because meters are not necessarily accurate. Maybe you only had meters during wet years, and I think there are other approaches that can be used to estimate water demand that would be a little bit more fair. Nevertheless, your water license is for 56,000 cubic meters per year. And I did the math back, and that's around 2,000 liters. That's per family. That's not per person. That's 2,000 liters per lot per day. And so that equals 2,500 liters per person per day, which is the Canadian average. The Okanagan average is a bit higher, like 700. And so as you expect household sizes to increase, we can expect the per person number to be about the same, but the per lot number to go up. And so that can be worrisome to you folks as the water system owner. So I've got a couple other things to consider here. Indoor water use is insignificant. So you can always have confidence that you will always be able to provide indoor water use. The average indoor water use per person is 150 liters. And so even if you had 2 more people, that's only 4,000 cubic meters per year more. So it's definitely something that the RDOS can manage with the service users. Outdoor water use. That is something that I know you are experts at this already. And so the habits can really change. When we looked at the data with Lisa's team, it was pretty obvious what years there was some conservation and what years there wasn't. And you can drastically, in 1 year, you could already today blow through your 56,000 license, but in other years, you can be almost half that. So is there enough to grow? No, you can only control people's, this is up to you, I suppose, right? My argument would be, how much control do you really have, even if it takes quite a lot of effort to do conservation. And of course, we need to keep that up. But at the same time, climate change alone is probably enough. You'll have enough on your plate just managing that. So why is this such a big deal? Why do we care about the water license so much? Under the Water Sustainability Act, new groundwater users must consider, the statutory decision maker must consider environmental flow needs when they review new groundwater use license applications. So as part of the transitional period, you basically got grandfathered in, no questions asked. But now the province is very confident in their interpretation of the act, and they've already denied water licenses in the Lumbee area, Bassett Creek area, because the applicant could not prove that the aquifer was not connected to Bassett Creek, and Bassett Creek already doesn't meet its environmental flow needs. All right, so on to planning, on to recommendations. I've got 3 slides here, and then happy to take questions, Chair. So The first that I've already hinted at is to limit domestic groundwater use within the North and South Meadow Valley and the North Falder Aquifer subregion. I don't think there's a region, I don't think the data supports limiting domestic use in the Trout Creek Aquifer subregion. We were really focused on Falder and North. So it was kind of out of scope to look too far further to the south. But I can't think of why you couldn't. On a grand scheme, of course, the aquifer has its own geometry and it can change on a lot by lot basis. But in general, I don't see any data to support limiting this. Non-domestic use is a much bigger scope, so that was out of scope, and we just need to rely on the province to do their part and review the applications and do a good job with that. Obviously, we talked about promoting water conservation measures so that you can continue to offer your water service to that service area, and start maybe thinking about, is this new groundwater use license application even an opportunity? Is there available water in the Trout Creek watershed, or are there already environmental flow needs in Trout Creek that are already being impacted? On the data collection side, we do have a couple recommendations to support and continue to add evidence to our conceptual models. Continue to monitor your use, obviously, because of the water license, and you can use that to gauge how effective your water conservation strategies are going. We would love to see some pretty cool hydrometric flow monitoring studies in Trout Creek and Dark Creek to support this concept of losing streams. Golder did it once in October, so the best time to do it is in October when it's safe to do that in Trout Creek, when the flows are low. And we might want to, it's been a while since we've done a pumping test on FCW2, so we might want to do that and confirm my concept that the water levels in the other areas aren't impacted. And I always like to lead on a positive note. There's lots of great stuff going on in partnerships. You folks obviously know all about this. I've heard lots of examples of partnerships already on the call today. You've got your Okanagan Basin Water Board that has a granting program that you've applied and been successful at. You've got your Okanagan Nation Alliance partner that is also doing some great stuff in this area. There's the Living Lakes Canada has a groundwater monitoring network program. It's mostly in the Kootenays. That might be a great program to sign on for. And Ministry of Forests also, and the new Ministry Land, Water and Resource Stewardship, source protection, watersheds, fish, that's all under their umbrella too. So there's lots of opportunities to keep up all the great work that you have done over the years. So Chair, that's the end of the presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions through you.
Great, thank you. I'll go to the board and see if there's any questions. Let's great. Yeah, go ahead, Director Holmes.
Yeah, thank you very much. So I'm a director from Summerland, the district of Summerland. So when we talk about the Trout Creek aquifer at Falder, so upstream from Falder, it's recharged basically from the network of dams, which is managed by the district of Summerland, specifically Thirst Dam, and that's what I guess supplies the aquifer and the community of Falder. And I don't know if you had a look at the district of Summerland's new water master plan, but it's Summerland's position that a bulk water agreement is required between Summerland and the RDOS, specifically for Falder, to I guess legalize that source, that water source that's supplied to Falder from Summerland's reservoirs, and it's not so much about collecting money for that, but it's about encouraging good stewardship of downstream Trout Creek into Trout Creek to ensure that the water flows are managed for what's required. And so my question is, will a draft of the report, will you be working with the District of Summerland to incorporate that and you know, to refer the plan to the District of Summerland so that they can provide feedback?
Thanks, Director. Ms. Green?
Thanks. Yeah, you were coming in and out. If you could speak into the microphone a little bit more next time. Thank you. Thank you, Chair. A bulk water agreement to legalize that source. So the province issued a water license for the Boulder Community Wells 1 and 2 under the Water Sustainability Act. So that is legal up to the 56,000. Any new groundwater use license application, the 3 questions that we must answer are any other water license holders or water users impacted? So of course there would be an opportunity. The province would have to work with the district and any other water license holders. The other questions are, if the aquifer is connected to a surface water body, to a stream they call it, the decision maker must consider environmental flow needs. And so we've talked about that, and of course that's our recommendation, is to work with the Ministry of Forest and the District of Summerland, obviously as extended, as you're one of the major water license holders in the area. So I've changed my tune when I manage clients' expectations. Now I say, assume you will not get a water license. And then I work backwards. So in the Okanagan, I just start with that. Assume there is no more water available, and then work backwards to see if you can see a path forward. So that's definitely one of our recommendations, was to look into what would be the path forward if we were to develop a plan, a bunch of technical assessments to apply for new groundwater use license. And that would be our first call. And I meant to reach out to the District of Summerland. I know this project was super, super important, and we wanted to wait as long as possible because those 2 stations on Dark Creek were only put in by the Okanagan Nation Alliance in June 2020. So we didn't even have 2 years of data, and usually you look at 30 years of data. So I did reach out to the partners at Ministry of Forest that managed that observation well 366, and I should have probably reached out to you guys, but District of Summerland was very much part of the project, and definitely that would be part of the next phase for sure.
Thanks, Ms. Green. Do you have a follow-up? No? Okay, great. Director Canoto?
Thank you. Through the chair. One thing I noticed, you've only dealt with overburden wells, which I kind of understand. It's pretty difficult to track water that's not outside of the overburdens. So as I'm sure you're aware, there's great pressure on the rural areas for developments. And I'm just kind of wondering about contamination of water tables by septic services. That's the other kind of fly on the wall that comes with this whole thing. Do you have any information on that particular issue?
Green?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Director. Yes, for sure. Okay, so there were 2 questions. I know the second question was around contamination from septic services. I didn't quite understand the first question around bedrock. I can talk to that too.
Yeah, I'm just curious whether you have any tracking on bedrock water. I know that's kind of a different topic and a much more difficult one to track, but I haven't heard of.
Sure, I can mention it. We do mention it in the report. All right, so we'll start with the second question first. So contamination from septic fields. This project definitely focused on availability. There's also quality. So trying to figure out how to answer this question because I do a lot of source protection plans too. As long as the septic fields are being maintained and following rules, they're mostly individual septic fields. You have quite a low density of properties. The Falder Community Well System obviously is managed by Interior Health Authority, and so of course they've figured out the groundwater risk of containing pathogens and its risk and all of that, and have adequate treatment to meet those treatment objectives. From an individual source, every individual is responsible for drinking. Interior Health only cares if you make the public sick. They don't care if you make your own family sick. So every individual is responsible for maintaining their own septic field, and if they're drinking their own water, they would be drinking their own poop. So hopefully they are thinking about those things. How's that? Does that answer that question? Okay. Regarding the overburden wells, yes, so there are bedrock wells here. Typically, bedrock does not support a ton of supply. They're typically there is no porous media in a bedrock. You're dealing with a fractured media. And so then it depends on how interconnected the fractures are between each other and to another water, a more plentiful water source, which typically is the sands and gravel aquifer on top of the bedrock. And so if you're drilling a bedrock well super shallow, just inside, just below your sands and gravel, where do you think the water is coming from? It's coming from surface. It's going to take the path of least resistance. It's probably going to take it from the sand and gravel aquifer right above it. If you drilled a super deep well, that connection to take where is the water coming from is a lot harder to track because fractures do funky things like you alluded to. And so perhaps that water is coming from, you know, an area far away, but I think it would be pretty tough to prove that that water would not impact Aquifer 299.
Ronaldo, do you have a follow-up?
No, thank you. That answers both questions.
We're just going to the board to see if there's any other questions. Not seeing any. So I have a couple of questions on the screen. I'm the director for Falder and Meadow Valley. And so this is the first time that I've seen your report. And I'm wondering if the report is complete and when we will all be able to get a copy of the report, because a lot of the information, when it's not in our wheelhouse, we need some time to mull it over. And it's a pretty significant report. It's going to influence perhaps the rezoning and what we're going to be doing next with it. So when will the report be ready to be released to the board?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, so we started this project. You know, there was some staffing constraints on the RDOS side and on our side, but it took us a while to figure out exactly the project objectives, knowing that the data quality, the quality of the data that goes into our aquifer budget was not as much as we had hoped for. It never is. So it took us a while to get the ball rolling, to figure out the conceptual model of groundwater flow, to come up with an alternative work plan if we aren't able to do the full quantitative water budget like we did for the Similkameen watershed, which had 30 years of data. You have not even 2 years, maybe just 2 years on Dark Creek. You have no data on Trout Creek except for down at the mouth. So it took us a bit of time to figure that out. We figured out the alternative plan. We figured out the questions. We figured out that, yes, there's enough alternative evidence to support our conclusions. And then we also had to bring in a subcontractor. So the report is draft. It's in good shape. The figures are never perfect. Everyone wants little changes to the figure. And I think the next step is to prepare a 3-page shorter version. I don't know, Lisa, did you want to add anything to that, or?
Yeah.
Yep. Excuse me. I can add that, yeah, the report, we're just about to receive the next version of the draft, and just to make sure that everything that we had talked about and the changes are all taken into account. So we should have that before the next board meeting is when we're anticipating being able to bring it forward. There's going to be a 2 to 3 page summary for the general public, just with some graphs and some general information that they can get more technical information from the report if they want, but this is sort of a general overview so that that people can know the basics about what the report summarizes.
Okay, thanks. So because I know we're getting close out of time, and a lot of my questions are kind of detailed and just grabbing this information for the first time. So if that report comes next week, is the plan then, Ms. Green, for you to come back to the board and present the summary to us, or is this the only time you're coming to the board?
Lisa, would you like to answer that one?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, this is the only presentation that we had planned for Ms. Green to come. But if you would like some very technical questions answered, we could certainly invite her to come back.
Yeah, for me, I just need more time to mull this over and to think about it, and everything. It's hard to be put on the spot without having any preparation to get a report. If we could get a copy of what you just presented, I think that would be really helpful as well. And then I guess we'll wait for the summary to come, and I'll get my questions answered hopefully next week or before the next board meeting. Are you okay with sharing your slides from today?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I'll get those cleaned up and send that through.
Okay, and then so Ms. Bloomfield, is the report, are all the terms of reference in the report, is everything met from the staff side, or is there more data that's supposed to be coming?
Go ahead, Lisa.
Yeah, no, the terms of reference that we put out were very general because we wanted the consultants to be able to tell us how we wanted to achieve our objectives. And what the report does have is it does show what we need at this point based on the information available. These are the best conclusions that we could ask. If we can move forward with recommendations, then we can further drill down into more details.
Okay, thank you. So my understanding is you're waiting for the next iteration of the report, and a summary is going to come forward as well from the consultants, and then both of those will be sent to the board for our review, hopefully before the next board meeting.
Yes.
Is that your understanding? Yep. Okay, great. Then I'll leave it there from my end, and I'll wait for more information to come. I'll just check with the table again. Anybody else have more questions? Okay, I'm not seeing any. So thank you, Ms. Green, for your work and your explanations and the report. So I'm looking forward to taking a closer look at it with a little bit more time. So appreciate your time.
You're welcome. It's a fun project to be part of.
Great, thank you so much. I don't think there's anything other business to discuss on this end. So I'll just look for a motion to adjourn the meeting, please. First, and I see a seconder. Thank you. All in favor? Sorry, any opposed? I think I did that backwards. Sorry, guys. So we're adjourned. Thanks very much.
Okay, thank you, Director Gettens. I believe we are scheduled now for our noon or lunch hour speaker. I do have a brief bio to read here. Today we are honored to have Derek Lilly join us. Mr. Lilly is a board member with the start here.
I'll grab this. Did you get a USB? Yeah, I got that. Thank you.
Started with the regular board meeting. So good afternoon, everybody. I'll look for, well, before we ask for a motion on the agenda, this is the opportunity to remove anything from the consent agenda. If there, I'll come to you in a second, Director Monteith, but anything to be removed from the consent agenda? Looking for any hands there. Director Monteith, you had...
Yes, thank you. So I have a conflict of interest here for the consent agenda, so I'll just step outside for that.
Okay. Give you a half a second to vacate the room. So nothing to remove from the consent agenda. So looking for a motion to approve the agenda. Moved, seconded, thank you. All in favor? Great. Any opposed? Motion carries. That brings us to the consent agenda, corporate issues. Motion to adopt. Moved, seconded, thank you. All in favor? Thank you very much. Any opposed? Motion carries. Consent agenda development services. Looking for a motion to adopt there. Moved, seconded, thank you. All in favor? Thank you. Any opposed? Motion carries. Could somebody just let Director Monteith know that we're done with the consent agenda? Someone? Perfect, thank you. That brings us down to development services. Item B1, electoral area C, DVP, CAO.
This is an application for an addition to a farm product processing and packaging warehouse at 577 Road 2, Mr. Chair. And because it exceeds the maximum parcel coverage and because it's a very large warehouse, we are recommending that that be denied.
Okay, I will go to Director Knodel for direction on this.
Yeah, I'd like to move this to my APC for a look.
Okay, so you're making the motion to send it to the APC?
Yes, please.
All right. Is there a seconder? Thank you. Any discussion on that? Seeing no hands. This is a rural vote. All those in favor? Thank you. Any opposed? Motion carries. Down to B2, which is a DVP in Area I, CAO.
This is an application for variances to put 3 single detached dwellings at 130 Ponderosa Avenue, Cleedon, Mr. Chair. So it is a legally subdivided parcel and it is zoned appropriately for residential, but it's a very small parcel. And what they're asking for is a rear yard variance from 7.5 to 6 meters, an interior side yard variance from 1.5 to 1.2 on each of these 3 lots, and an exterior side yard from 4.5 to 1.2. But nevertheless, there's no subdivision required, there's no zoning required, and our choice really then is either to approve the variances or permit the developer to construct like very skinny houses. So we're recommending that this be approved, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. I'll go to Director Monteith for direction on this.
And to the chair, based on the considerable feedback from the community, I would like my APC to have a look at it.
Okay, so you want to send it to the APC. A seconder for that motion. Thank you. Any discussion on that? Seeing none. Again, this is a rural vote. All those in favor? Thank you. Any opposed? Motion carries. B3, a zoning amendment in electoral area C, CAO.
Yeah, so this is a property owner who's running an animal rescue operation on his property. So he's got 8 livestock. He's not permitted to have that much livestock. So what would be required is a zoning amendment to allow him to keep his 2 horses, 4 mini horses, 1 goat, and 1 mini donkey on his property. So we are recommending that this go for first and second reading, Mr. Chair, and come before the board for public hearing on September 1st.
Okay, I'll go to Director Knodel for direction on this.
Yeah, I'd like to move the alternate and that this be denied. It's going to be very problematic in this neighborhood, and I'll talk to it further if need be.
Okay, so a motion to deny, is there a seconder for that? Okay, it's seconded. When we do have a motion to deny, that usually gives an opportunity for the applicant to present. And I'm not sure if they are on or not. Can you tell us, Danny?
I could just add, Mr. Chair, that if it does go to first and second, the property owner could speak at the public hearing.
Yeah, but this is a motion to deny right now that's been made, moved and seconded, so. If they're not on, or if they are on, could you raise your hand or let us know some way? Otherwise, in all fairness, we probably should, as we've done in the past, defer this until we can notify the applicant.
I did talk to the applicant day before yesterday, and she said she wouldn't be available. I did tell her that I would not be supporting this. It's in a very tight area. It's part of the Willowbrook subdivision, and opening this door is going to cause a lot of problem. It's tight in amongst other houses. As you can see from the representations, it's not exactly favorable as a permanent change. But we are, and of course, Shannon did recommend that TUP be used. She's not a registered service. It's her own animals, but making this a permanent change would cause considerable problems in the neighborhood. I've already been approached by 2 others that would really love to stop paying extra fees on their rental pastures, if you will, and bring their horses home to roost. So this is kicking a door open that could be a problem. We did have a public information meeting. She did attend. There was 1 speaker at it. It didn't go well. Let's put it that way. But anyways, that's where we're at with this one. It is problematic.
Okay, not saying one way or the other whether it's bad or a good idea. It's just fairness to let the applicant usually have the opportunity to speak. Director Kozakovich, you have a hand up?
Yeah, thank you. I believe Director Knodel said that he spoke with the applicant and she was not available. So, I think that we should be deferring in order to at least hear from the applicant before we close this door. So I'm happy to make a motion to defer until the applicant can attend at the next meeting.
Okay, a motion is moved, seconded, I'm assuming, from Director Bush there. Thank you. Call the question on deferral. All those in favor? Thank you. Any opposed? Motion carries. B4, another zoning bylaw amendment in electoral area C. CAO.
Yeah, so this is an accessory dwelling that would be constructed over an existing winery bakery type of operation. So it would be the same footprint And it would be eventually the primary dwelling, because the intent now is to take the primary dwelling down or use it for storage and have this new dwelling be the primary dwelling. So we're recommending that this get first and second reading. This is at 4120 Black Sage Road, that it get first and second reading and proceed to a public hearing, Mr. Chair, and then the public hearing be before the board on September 1st.
Okay, thank you. Again, Director Knodel, a direction on this one?
Yeah, this one's consistent with the philosophy of the area, so I'd like to make the administrative recommendation.
Okay, moved, seconded. Thank you. It's on the floor. Any discussion on this? Seeing no hands, again, rural vote. All those in favor? Thank you. Any opposed? Motion carries. B5, Electoral Area G Official Community Plan, CAO.
We had the consultation program and the significant issues for the Area G official community plan at the prior development services meeting, Mr. Chair. So this is now the formal process of giving the bylaw readings, and we're recommending that it get first and second reading, and then it be referred to Director Roberts for a public hearing.
Okay, thank you. I'll go to Director Cottrell for this.
Yes, the process is takes some time, and but I think in the end, having the community be able to have a say and have an official plan will be a really good thing, and hopefully, and then in the future, the people can decide if they want to move ahead into the next step after this. But this is certainly the first step.
Okay, so will you move the, it's broken into two parts here. So the first recommendation?
Yeah. Move that we go ahead with the first reading.
Okay, he's moving it. Is there a seconder for that? Thank you. Any discussion on that? It's broken into two parts because the first part is a rural vote. So I'll call the question on that. All those in favor? Thank you very much. Any opposed? Motion carries. And the second part is just putting it out to public hearing for Director Roberts or someone in his place if he happens to not be around at that time. You're willing to make that motion? Thank you. Moved, seconded. Thank you very much. Any discussion on this? Seeing no hands, again, this one's a corporate vote. All those in favor? Thank you. Any opposed? Motion carries. Down to B6, CAO, a zoning amendment for I believe this is the Okanagan zoning bylaw.
This was the subject of our public hearing this morning, Mr. Chair, and it is the Okanagan Valley zoning bylaw, and it is to set new regulations and definitions for mobile vendors. Now, the bylaw was worded correctly, but we may have missed Area E on some of our administrative reports. Not that that would be considered a significant change to avoid the public hearing. So we are recommending that this be brought forward for third reading, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. Direction from the board on this. Someone willing to move this one? Director Knodel, I'm assuming you're moving it. Thank you. A seconder? Thank you very much. Any discussion on this one? Again, this was the subject of this morning's public hearing. Nobody had any comments at that. Seeing no further no hands, I will call the question on this. Rural vote. All those in favor? Thank you. Any opposed? Motion carries. That takes us to Public Works, C1. Area F Community Works Expenditure Bylaw, CAO.
Ooh, what is this? So this is $75,000 from the Area F Community Works Program, Mr. Chair, and it's to do some renovations on the pump station for the West Bench water system. We're recommending this get 3 readings and adopted.
Okay, and I'll go to Director Gettens on this. Go ahead, please, Director Gettens.
Thanks, Chair. I'll move the administrative recommendation, please.
Okay, moved. Is there a seconder for that? Thank you. Discussion on this one? Seeing no hands. This is a corporate vote, so all those in favor? Thank you. Any opposed? Motion carries. C2, which is the West Bench Booster Station Variable Frequency Drive Supply Installation Contract, CAO.
So now that we have the money, this would be the awarded contract for that work at the pump station for the West Bench water system, Mr. Chair. And we're recommending that it go to Keldon Electric Limited in the amount of $61,615. And then there are some discretionary costs as far as the installation and other deficiencies that may need to be cleaned up. So we're recommending the board proceed with that, Mr. Chair.
Okay, Director Gettens, direction on this?
Yep, thank you again, the administrative recommendation, and then I'll just speak to it if you don't mind.
Absolutely. So it's moved. Is there a seconder for that? Thank you. Director Gettens, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to thank staff for this one. It's the lights the new lights that we have going up West Bench Hill. Sometimes they go off, and this will repair that. But it's such a beautiful lighting fixture that got the sides of the gully and stuff. So thanks for doing that, staff. I really appreciate it. So it was a quick turnaround. So appreciated.
Okay. Any further discussion on this? Seeing none, again, a corporate vote. All in favor? Thank you. Any opposed? Motion carries. Over to Community Services, D1, License of Occupation, CAO.
Yeah, so we have a number of licenses of occupation in order to get tenure on parts of the KVR Trail throughout the regional district. And this is a section between Osprey Lake and Falder. And our license of occupation has expired. So we want to submit a replacement application, Mr. Chair, to allow us to continue doing trail maintenance on that section.
Okay, looking for direction on this one. Seems to be fairly straightforward. Anybody willing to make that motion? Moved, seconded, thank you. Any discussion on this? Seeing no hands, again, a corporate vote. All those in favor? Thank you. Any opposed? Motion carries. Over to D2, Regional Emergency Management Program Review, the revised terms of reference, CAO.
So we had a discussion about this at the last Protective Services Committee meeting, Mr. Chair, and there were still some further changes from what we had proposed for the terms of reference for the Emergency Management Project Review. So we redrafted those. I've pointed out, if you got your reports, I've pointed out in highlighted in items 7 and 8, the changes that were made at the last committee. So we've added in number 7, we've added in number 7 that not only will we meet the industry standards, but also participant standards when we go ahead and do this, or participant requirements when we do the study. And then we've also added a new section in there saying that provide an opinion if the current regional emergency management program meets the requirements of the proposed Emergency Program Act, because we know that the existing act is under discussion and there are going to be some significant changes. So we want them to look forward during this study to make sure that we comply with that. So with that, again, Mr. Chair, we're recommending that the terms of reference for the study be approved.
Okay. Director Coyne, are you moving that? Okay, moved. Is there a seconder for it? Thank you. Any discussion on this? We've seen this several times. I think it's finally where we are comfortable. I'll call the question on a corporate vote. All those in favor? Thank you very much. Any opposed? Motion carries. Nothing in legislative services. Down to the CAO report. CAO.
So I presented a report on the Karamias Creek fire earlier on under committee today, Mr. Chair, and there are some recommendations that we need to make. So rather than just put something up and obliterate the screen, I'll just read out the set that we need. So I need a motion that to ratify the state and local emergency that the chair declared on Friday for Area I. And I need the declaration of state and local emergency that we imposed on Monday in Area G. So if I could get those first, Mr. Chair.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, there's a mover and a seconder. Any discussion on these? Seeing none, this is a corporate vote. All those in favor? Thank you. Any opposed? Motion's carried. The next one, CAO?
So the next set then, because the first one that you just approved expires tomorrow, we want to get the board's permission to extend that declaration of state and local emergency for Area I until August 12th. And we want the state of local emergency for Area G extended to August 15th.
Okay. Director Coyne, you're
move it.
moving that, I'm assuming. Thank you.
Yep.
A seconder? Thank you. It's on the floor. Anybody wanting to speak to this? Seeing no questions or hands. Again, this is a corporate vote. All in favor? Thank you very much. Any opposed? Motion carries. Anything further, CAO?
Just permission from the board to send those in to the Minister of State for emergency preparedness.
I believe that's all right by us. We've approved them. So. Thank you for that. Chair's report. The only thing I've got to report from the chair's perspective is August 10th. I do have another meeting on the Fire Safety Act. And at some point in time, I may be coming to some of the rural directors for some opinions or some ideas on numbers of businesses that may actually need to be inspected in some of the rural areas, the unincorporated areas, because right now that's a big part of the discussion on this. So expect me to maybe come and ask some questions or look for some help with that in the future. Some areas are going to have a lot more inspection done than others if we end up going this route. So it's something to keep in mind. Things have been kind of busy with the fires, and I'm hoping the cool weather gives us a chance to get a handle on this one. Otherwise, I have nothing further to report from me. Looking for director's motions. Any motions to be notices of motions or motions to be made from directors? Seeing nothing there. Board members' verbal updates. Anything to report from the communities? Director Vasilaki, I see a hand. Go ahead, please.
Thank you very much. Through the chair, I'd like to make the announcement that Peach Festival is in full swing. And there's tons and tons of entertainment in the park daily. The majority of the entertainment starts in the evening between 5 and 7 and ends at 11 p.m. With a lot of food and drink in the park itself. We had the opening last night, and there were maybe 2,000, 2,500 plus people in the park taking in the opening ceremonies and all the entertainment that took place last night. The royal pageant will be taking place tomorrow night, Friday, at the Cleveland Theater. It begins at 7, but if you want to get a seat, you should make sure you get there a lot earlier than that. And I believe we're having 52 past royalty members that would be present, and they'll be here throughout the whole Peach Festival ceremonies, so on and so forth. And on Saturday, the parade begins at 10 a.m. It starts up by the high school and goes down Main and then down Martin. I think it turns left on Pedmore and goes down Martin all the way down to Lakeshore Drive. And from there, it turns left all the way to the Sycamoose. So if you wish to see the parade, please be there on the sidewalks early because there's going to be a lot of people there. And for the directors and anyone wishing to have a nice seat and a good view of the parade, we'll be putting seating up at the steps of City Hall. You are all welcome to come and have a seat there in order to enjoy the parade. We might have some cookies and some drinks there as well for you to enjoy. So please come along, enjoy the Peach Festival. It is the largest and free festival in Canada. Thank you very much.
And it sounds like a great time. Thank you. Director Coyne, Senior, go ahead.
Yeah, this isn't really an announcement. This is just a huge kudos to the communication staff at the regional district. What the releases that Eric and his crew have been putting out to do with the fire in Caramias Creek has been awesome. BC Wildfire have really stepped up their game this year, and it's just phenomenal. It's like a different year. Well, it is a different year, but it's like a new program, and I can't say enough good about it. It's just amazing the work that's going on there. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you for that. It's good comments. Director Monteith?
To the chair, I just want to echo what Director Coyne just said. Area I has definitely had a different experience, and we've had great communication, great interaction with staff. Things have gone as smooth, especially when we're in a tense situation. People are being evacuated or under alert. There's just this huge need for communication, and the regional district has done that. So I'm definitely very appreciative of the staff, and it's been very smooth. So I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. That is good news to hear everybody's seeing some improvements there. It's wonderful. Any other verbal updates from directors? Seeing none, we do have a closed session. So looking for a motion to go in camera. Moved, seconded, thank you. All those in favor? Thank you very much. Any opposed? Motion carries. So give Danny a second to kick everybody off that